What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Terror Table, a horror movie podcast that is presented by myself, Mitch, your boy, and also
presented in high def by Buzi.
Yes, so we are both here, and today we're welcoming a very special guest. He is a first-time guest, even though technically we have already recorded this episode and it completely botched last weekend. It was due to powers out of our control. The audios just got super messed up. So we're doing a little rehash here.
We're pretending that we didn't already have all these conversations.
Exactly. But to be fair, yeah, whatever. I'll keep going. He is the host of the popular YouTube channel Specifically Blu-Rays. He is also the host of the new podcast Scouring the Depths, which is a podcast dedicated to heavy music. But most importantly, he's my buddy. Finally, and once again, welcome to the Terror Table, Nathan Jones.
Well, hello there. How's everyone doing?
Doing fantastic.
Great now that you're here.
Oh, geez, look at us. Look at us.
Well,
but
yes, I'm here to be happy. I'm here to party.
Hell yeah. When we party, we will. So today we are going to be discussing Nathan's film pick of the week, which is Na Hong Jin's South Korean folk horror film, The Wailing from 2016. So we're going to do our normal thing. We go around the table, talk about everything that we've seen recently. It's been a while.
We get to know Nathan as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, let's start off with that. So at this point, I think it's safe to assume that you're a horror fan. Very seldom do we ever bring on guests who are just not horror fans. So instead of the usual, what's your history with the genre? I want to kick things off with your thoughts on folk horror in particular. So Nathan, I know you're a huge fan of folk horror. Can you tell our list? Can you teach us like we're five?
Yeah. So back in the day, when the olden times, back before we were even around, there were stories that would scare children, and this would eventually turn into folk tales. But no, I don't know. You said explain it like we were five, so I just went that route.
It's working. So. I'm finally understanding.
Okay. Now, okay.
I'm picking.
So, as we're little children, we get scared by the things that we are able to see and things that we get to hear. And that happens all around the world, and that's kind of at the heart of folk horror, honestly. But folk horror is something that, like I said, is deeply entrenched in all these different cultures. It means something different to every culture. There's a lot of amazing, recently great folk horror films that have been portrayed, along with things from the past. It's always been around. It's before the medium itself, and something that, like I said, it's a lot of that unknown stuff that really just gets under our skin, and it could be from demons to spirits, all the way to just humans trying to conjure up these things. So folk horror is something that I hold really near and dear to my heart. I'm a huge fan of a lot of recent outputs on disc. Severin Films put out all the Haunts BRs box set, which is a phenomenal box set that if you are interested in folk horror, that's the place I would suggest starting, or at least on the documentary, at least that kind of starts the whole thing. It's a good
Dark
start.
and Days Bewitched, correct?
Yes.
It's like a
Woodlands
3-hour documentary.
Yeah.
Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched. Yeah, it's a wicked box set. And okay, that's good, because I was actually wondering, because I watched The Wailing, obviously, again, and I've always considered myself a big fan of folk horror, but the last couple I've seen have had a severe lack of Mumford and Sons.
There's a lot of the whole romp and stomp genre, stomp your feet, clap your hands, you got your Ugg boots on. That's honestly enough horror that you need. You don't need anything else.
Yeah. Well, we're living in a current renaissance, it seems, of folk horror stories. And, I think the most notable one that really had an impact on, the cultural, like, cinema and moviegoers was Robert Eggers' The Witch, which I know we're all huge fans of here. And it's obviously it's huge to me. The Druid's Hand's a folk horror story, and I love this subgenre. Buzi, how do you feel about folk horror?
Yeah, I think folk horror is always something that's really entertaining, and it's kind of how Nathan had mentioned, like it goes back, and it's such a primal thing, like that idea of storytelling with one another, and maybe that kind of shifting in terms of what the story becomes if you're looking like way back, because pretty much every folk horror, like folk tale is, it's more rooted in like kind of horror-ish elements, and usually it's pretty far off from what the actual thing truly was. And I have a question about that. Would you consider more contemporary or newer versions of horror folklore being stuff where, like, remember we all were talking about on the playground about Marilyn Manson removing a rib to suck his own? I feel like that technically was kind of like, it was like folklore, because it was just like so much just verbal, everybody was telling each other about it, and it always was, the details might have been different, but that part always kind of remained the same. So would you consider that to be like a more modernish?
Nathan, I think what he's trying to say is Marilyn Manson removing his own rib to suck his own dick considered a folk horror?
Yeah, is that contemporary?
So I've heard several times in the school hallways.
Right.
I do think you bring up a good point on that. Like, unfortunately I don't want to go the route of how conspiracy theories have more or less become, something really, really insane in the last like 5 to 6 years.
Are you saying they're kind of like less fun folklore? It's like weirdo folklore.
Well, that one's more fun because it's rather harmless. I feel like.
Right.
But then there's the ones that have went down the crazy political rabbit hole that I'm just like, we can just leave X-Files at the door. I mean, I love X-Files, but
are you talking about this Q thing that you were trying to get me a part of a couple of years ago?
I gotta go. I'm
just kidding.
Apparently you won a new watch. Apparently the FBI said you're on a watch list, so you get a new one if you go down there.
Listen, so there's this pyramid that I'm really involved in, and I think both of you guys can really benefit from the benefits.
Right. If we start at the bottom and work our way up, right? Like all great.
Well, it's kind of like a upside down one. So like you start at and then you go to the top, but you go down.
Right. That's a great idea.
Yeah. Back to folk horror quickly. Back to folk horror quickly. I want to just touch on a little bit. Like, Nathan, what are some of your favorite folk horror films? They can be recent, they can be of all time. Because I want to highlight one I've talked about on the show, but it's on that box set. So I want to see what you're thinking.
Yeah, some of my favorite. I mean, obviously you mentioned The Witch, which is really the reason why it all started with me. Like that was kind of my first real love of folk horror, and like
you wanted to live deliciously.
I did, and I have Black Phillip in the corner. He watches over my collection as we speak, along with Paddington, which good combo right there.
Yeah, good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, good cop, bad cop, and the bad cop is Paddington. And so anyway, it's that. And then obviously we've mentioned, like, we're going to be mentioning The Wailing. I think this was another thing that kind of went back a few years ago, and that really caught my eye. But of course, Wicker Man is one that obviously is super well known. It's probably the best well-known folk horror film, I would say. That movie is delightful, and it still continues to be impressive. But besides that, in that box set, there's quite a bit of things in there that I really, really like. Clear Cut's one that I really enjoy.
That's the one I was about to talk about. So that was my discovery of the year for 2022, which I didn't end up talking about on that episode. Sorry, our year-end episode, but Clear Cut was easily far and away my favorite discovery of the year, and it's a Canadian-made film. Stars legendary Graham Greene, and that movie just fucking blew me away. And it's on Shudder. Like, most of this stuff is on Shudder these days, so you have access. Everyone has access to see these really cool movies that kind of faded into obscurity over the years.
Yeah, I was gonna say I did an episode with Lindsay, a good friend of ours, on her podcast.
Shout out,
Lindsay. And we actually did a combination of that film where she chose that one, and I actually I'm trying to think of the name as
Eyes of Fire.
Paddington.
Not Eyes. We didn't talk about Eyes of Fire, but we will talk about that film as well. But I talked about Celia, the Australian film that's in that box set from 1989. That movie is absolutely fantastic. It definitely reminds me of a weird Pan's Labyrinth, which Pan's Labyrinth I would consider to be a folk tale as well. And I'm a major fan of that. So honestly, folk horror, like, it naturally comes into the things that I love, which is just really strange, like how it combines. I mean, I know we talked about this kind of off camera, but our shared mutual love of metal and like that dark side of music. I feel like it all encompasses this genre very, very well as well. You know,
Totally. Yeah, you can find like there's so many moments in these legendary folk horror movies that are just prime guitar solo material. Like just metal as hell, especially Eyes of Fire. That's one I watched recently as well. And Buzi, have you seen Eyes of Fire?
I have not.
Yeah, it's that
he's
one's
had
on
Eyes of Fire.
Yeah, that's
You
just
do have
my
Eyes of Fire.
passionate eyes.
Yeah, we showed that one at the Saskatoon Fantastic Film Festival a couple of years ago, along with Clear Cut, and I had missed the Clear Cut screening. But every year they always do like retrospectives of like certain kinds of films, and they chose folk horror that year. And Eyes of Fire is just wild, but it has one of my favorite. There's a moment in it. I'm not going to say it's better than the sleeping bag scene in Prophecy, but it's similar, and it involves a wild explosion. I think the whole movie itself is just like, don't get me wrong, I love Prophecy, but Eyes of Fire is like a better movie, and so it makes it feel a little more jarring. Do you know what I'm talking about, Nathan?
Bear?
I do.
The explosion with the kid.
I will say I have not seen Prophecy, which is a shame.
Oh,
but
yeah, shame on you.
Shame.
Everyone needs to see Prophecy.
Everyone needs to see Prophecy.
Not the one with Christopher Walken.
Even though
that one I've heard is good as well.
I guess I'll have to see. I'll have to watch both and see which one we prefer.
For sure. Well, that's great. This was a really nice start on folk horror. Why don't we just start talking about other things that we've seen recently? Who wants to lead us off? How about we give you a little bit of a break, Nathan? Buzi, why don't you tell us about something you've watched recently?
Sounds good. I think maybe the first thing we should address overall is something that you and I both watched together, which is a rare occurrence.
While you were visiting in Vancouver, while you were working, we went out for a nice din, and then we capped the night off with a viewing of M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin.
Yes, which is based off of a Paul Tremblay book that we both also read. So I feel like we're well versed in this overall. But
you guys can read?
We can. Yeah. It's actually this really cool party trick we pull out where we read a menu.
Man, so lucky.
And I read it a couple of summers ago as well. So what did you think of the film?
You know, I think that it relied heavily on its strong suits, which number one is the hulking but mischievous and lovable in a weird way Dave Bautista. I think that overall the entire cast comparatively just really felt like they were in his shadow for having some like really great actors in here. Like I thought Rupert Grint was great. He didn't really get a chance to shine because he just wasn't there that long. And then I'm really bad with his actual name, but Holden from Mindhunter is also in this. And he just, he kind of feels like a background character in his own movie. But overall, I think it was kind of a cool idea. Obviously, I think the book takes a more interesting route overall, maybe a more ambitious route overall. This feels like kind of the safe play overall on this, but it's a cool story concept. It really does feel like, I don't know, when I read the book, it felt like more time had passed, but maybe that was just my concept of it, because it does feel like this goes really, really quick once it starts. And I guess that makes more sense that they're kind of pressured on time. But yeah, it did feel like everybody just accepted everything really quick as it was coming up. Kind of the ritualistic elements of it, they kind of shy away a bit from it. It's kind of more of like what you'd expect from a mainstream horror film. Like you get the implications of what's going on, but they tend to lean away from it. I think they showed a little bit of blood pooling, but and then there was a couple parts that me and Jason particularly thought were pretty humorous. With the airplane or whatever. It's hard to not laugh at some of
you don't want to. Yeah, we don't want to spoil it, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure that kind of stuff is in the trailer. But whatever, we'll skirt around it a little bit.
I didn't say what they were doing. They're just airplanes.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I was a huge fan of the book. I think it's still my favorite book from Paul Tremblay, and I do consider myself a fan. I know that some people don't really like that he tends to lean into ambiguity in a lot of his endings. Like there's a little while there. I haven't read any of his recent books from the last like year and a half, 2 years. I think Cabin at the End of the World is the most like his latest works that I have read up to. Just got busy, and yeah, like we had talked about before, reading is hard. But yeah, I really liked the book, and I liked the ending in the book a lot. And I think that out of all the books that I have read by him that do end off ambiguously, I think it's most suited, like it's suited well here in Knock at the Cabin. And not really a spoiler, but that's not what you're going to get from M. Night Shyamalan. M. Night Shyamalan is not going to give you an ambiguous ending. If anything, he's known for the opposite of doing that. And I was really interested in seeing what he would do with the material. I do consider myself an M. Night fan. I know that his works are very inconsistent. There was a very dark patch there, but I personally would put Knock at the Cabin right in the middle of the road for his filmography. I don't think it's near his best, but it's also certainly nowhere near his worst. There are now only 2 M. Night movies I haven't seen, which is The Last Airbender and After Earth. But yeah, I just I don't know. There's
movie rotation right there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Save it for a rainy day.
For sure. But I don't know. The things about, I really like Knock at the Cabin. I'll get that out of the way. I really enjoyed it. It didn't necessarily like blow me away or anything like that, but if there's something that really stood out for me, it's the direction from M. Night and like the cinematography. I really loved the extreme close-ups that he pulls off in this movie, and it's so well suited for the story. But the best thing, without a doubt, is Dave Bautista. I'm not gonna lie, I've been getting kind of irritated by all of the articles and interviews with Bautista, or people talking about his work and him saying that he's like, I'm done playing these superheroes. Like, I want to be a dramatic actor. And I'm like, man, you should be proud that you are as good at playing a character like Drax as you are. Like in Guardians of the Galaxy, he's tremendous in it. And I know he was good in Blade Runner as well. But this is a whole other level. Like, he stole the movie. And I personally think that the acting was strong across the board in this thing. But Batista, without a doubt, he steals the show. And I think now it's like, oh, I get it. I want to see him in more roles like this. Like, he can handle this really meaty material. And yeah, I really loved his performance. But the one gripe I have with the movie, actually, I'm sure I have more, but I had this issue going into the movie, is there's something that happens in the book that I love. It was the part that hooked me and like got me. I was like, oh man, I have no idea where they're going to go from here because of this decision. And when I saw the trailers, I'm like, there is no way M. Night has the cojones to pull something off like that, like to include something as grim in his stories. Like, I just couldn't see it happening. But I'm going to eventually get to it. I watched Old as well. And he actually, yeah, so he doesn't do what I assumed he wasn't going to do in Knock at the Cabin. The movie still turned out really well, I thought. But for me, it was like, it's missing the teeth that story had. That made it truly devastating. But yeah, I think that I'm going to leave it on that.
Fair.
I still need to see it myself, but I'm
a fan
of
cinema.
I do not actually watch any movies. I've only seen the ones I've mentioned so far,
right?
And that's it.
And that's it. Well, I mean, if you really want to see it, you don't have to like run out and see it. You could like walk. I don't think even like a fast walk that's like maybe a bit too much even.
A nice jog.
Yeah, exactly.
So
figure,
maybe.
So I give it a thumbs up. I recommend it. I definitely had a lot of fun with it. Should we move on to Nathan? Nathan, what have you seen recently?
Yeah, so I had a really busy January. I watched 50 movies, which is insane. Just because I got sick twice and I had time on my hands. So I'll just talk about 3 real quick. I watched Bad Moon for the first time.
Hell yeah. Eric Red's classic.
Yeah, I really love that. I was somehow weirdly in a weird werewolf kick kind of the tail end of October last year.
Right.
And I bought a bunch of just Blu-rays that I'm like, oh, I don't have this yet. And there's several ones like that. Late Faces is one, and that's another one.
Have you watched that one yet?
I haven't seen that one yet.
Okay, you're in for a treat with that one as well.
Yeah, no, I'm excited when I get in a hairy situation, you know what I mean? So a
Oh,
little bit later on. Yeah.
boo.
uh
How
Hey.
dare
you
you?
know, now that you
But
mention Bad Moon and your collectorisms, it's weird that you mentioned that, because I was looking the other day. There is a German box set for Bad Moon that's got like all this like alternate art, but it's been like discontinued and sold out. So that's like my new challenge in life, is to find that one. But what did you think overall of Bad Moon? Because obviously, like, the standout in this, aside from the beautiful German Shepherd, is the
I was gonna
werewolf.
say the dog.
Yeah, the werewolf
Yeah.
itself, and how, like, I still think, maybe, obviously I grew up with that film and I have a deep love for it, but like I feel the werewolf in that holds up pretty darn well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like from the opening shot, which is wild. The locale for the for the first scene, didn't expect it to be in like deep in the jungle. Um, I don't even know where they were at. I want to say South America.
Yeah, it's got like that arachnophobia type
Yeah,
opening.
yeah, they're just somewhere in
Yeah.
Mongolia, and
They're like, all right, well, yeah, and there happens to be some wolf in the jungle, and then tears everyone to shit. So no, it looks good. I think it looks great. I was gonna say it reminds me, weirdly enough, of like it's like an adult version of like a Goosebumps story.
yeah, totally,
Mhm.
totally. I think that, yeah, that's like
Yeah.
the kid and the dog having that like friendship. I think that kind of really, like, it has those like go get him moments. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's no Werewolf of Fever Swamp, which is
That's
one of our
tough.
one of our favorites.
yeah. I mean, that scared the shit out of me as a kid. So yeah. But yeah, Batman was really good. I was really surprised by that.
I'm
Movie.
pretty sure
So
that's streaming somewhere in the US. I saw John Squires from Bloody Disgusting posting about it. I think it might be Peacock or something like that, because we don't have Peacock. Either way,
Yeah, we
Bad
just
Moon
have
is available
Pocock
online
here.
somewhere. What's that? We
Not
just
no
said,
Peacock. He's got you got Pocock.
Yeah, we have Pocock down here.
is that what you said?
So
I love you,
P
Boozy.
in the part of Peacock is reminiscent
Pocock.
of piss, and
Pocock.
then
We're gonna.
poo is poop.
Yeah,
Do you understand now, Mitch?
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think I get it.
this is a good one.
Okay.
Okay,
That
anyway,
was that.
I'm sorry for
It's
derailing
good.
everyone with Pocock.
No, you just got to keep going with it. Just keep. I mean, that's I used to teach, and this is exactly how I got my students. I just nailed them with
Pocock.
With
with
funny
Pocock.
words that had
Funny words.
That was tremendous work, Boozy.
Okay.
I just want to point that out.
Okay, sorry.
Well, this is
Where
a
were we going
fantastic-
with this?
Well, this is a segue actually, because the next movie I watched was a horror comedy, one from my childhood that also scared the hell out of me, and that is Dracula Dead and Loving It. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen that.
Leslie Nielsen is probably one of the greatest actors of all time, and all he had to do was just play himself, and
Mhm.
he doesn't have to. He has like it's crazy his range. Have you guys seen Forbidden Planet, by the way?
Yes.
Yes, I
sorry,
watched that a little while ago, I believe. That's on.
Yeah,
I think it's on Tubi as well.
probably.
Yeah, that's like the one movie where like it's. Well, I mean, I know he was in several things before he became Leslie Nielsen. Like we've seen him in Airplane and whatnot. But like seeing him in serious roles is very interesting because he seems like he's playing the same character. It's just the way he's delivering it is always hilarious. So
Yeah.
But Dracula Dead and Loving It, not a great movie at all. It's just super fun. Like,
Yeah.
and I had such a good time with it. Like honestly, like just when he meets Jonathan Harker for the first time, just seeing him like trip down the stairs, his shadow like is getting all like
Always funny stuff. Never miss.
So what is, because I haven't seen it. What is the plot of this? Why is he dead and what's he
It's
love?
the same as Dracula.
That's
Yeah, it's just a spoof of Dracula.
Oh,
like
so
Bram
it's just
Stoker's
like kind of
Dracula.
more of a contemporized at the time.
Not contemporary at all. It's
No?
like
Oh,
it's
okay.
set just like Bram Stoker's Dracula, but with Leslie Nielsen and with all that slapstick humor. I would mention to you guys when we talked about this before that I think that was the first movie I ever saw in the theater, which explains so much about me
Mhm.
and like how fucking deranged I can be.
And
Because
he loves it.
I do love it. What child is going to see Dracula Dead and loving it? I can still remember the day and where I was sitting when I saw that movie. Haven't seen it in years, but it's at the top of my list for movies I want to do on the podcast. I want to talk about Dracula Dead and Loving It, Young Frankenstein, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, all that kind of stuff. Because I
All good
know
movies.
Dracula Dead and Loving is like widely known as one of his worst movies, but I loved
Yeah.
it as a child. I just haven't seen it since.
Well, as you said, you're still like this is one of your first memories that you probably are still there as a
Yeah, for
child.
sure.
You're
Yeah, I
still a
got a big
child.
soft spot for it. I
Yeah.
am, yeah, and I am a child. That's awesome. So you enjoyed it though.
Yes, I loved it. Yeah, yeah, no, it definitely is something that maybe it doesn't hold up necessarily, but there's nostalgia at play.
Yeah.
So, um, and then the last movie I watched, which we didn't talk about last time when we were initially talking about this, I finally watched Pearl.
Oh,
Okay, yeah,
yes. I was talking about Pearl this morning
yeah.
with some buds.
And were you before we talk about Pearl, were you an X guy? Did X gonna give
Did
it
he
to
give
you?
it to you? Fuck
X
yeah.
did give it to me. You know, along with Pearl and Hank and their nice little gator. Isn't it Hank? Isn't that his name? Hank?
Can't remember, but that was
Yeah.
a highlight last year. The gator
Yeah,
kill.
I love.
We appreciate a good gator kill
Mhm.
at the terror table.
Yeah, no, X was really good, and I was really surprised. And actually, I remember as I was watching the film, and I because I saw it in theaters, and I remember near the end of it when the credits were happening, and I had no idea, by the way, that there was anything extra, but I just had a weird hunch that something was going to happen. And I remember that mutual Daniel and Chris had seen it, two mutual friends of ours.
Shout out Daniel, Chris.
Yeah, and they had seen it, but they hadn't seen like past the credits. They left, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched it, and then there was the trailer for Pearl, and I was like, "What? There's another movie?" And then I feel like it was hush hush for like 2 or 3 weeks. Like nobody knew about Pearl, like
It was, yeah. I
just like
remember
at all.
when I saw because I saw it opening weekend, and I remember it was like it found out like 3 weeks later that
Yeah,
Pearl was happening, and he had already shot it.
right. Yeah, because he did it simultaneously, kind of with X, and
Yeah.
which is just wild to me. And then I showed them like the bootleg. There's like a YouTube video of like somebody in the theater like taking the video of Pearl, and then so that's my first iteration of it. But it took me forever because I just watched it just recently. I waited for it to be on Blu-ray. So, but I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as X. I just didn't think it was as engaging. I feel like it just lacked a few characters. There could have been a little bit more, and I feel like their locales were fun and stuff. And I really like the bright aesthetic nature
Yeah.
of the whole thing because it was pretty much all in daylight. But yeah, overall, I still enjoyed it though. I had a really good time with it. Yeah.
I think I'm in the same boat as you. I'm not sure. Like I really liked Pearl, but I like fucking loved X. But I gotta watch them both again. But I did have a lot of like what I took away from Pearl was I felt like it was like the Psycho sequels. And I love the Psycho sequel, so that was a treat for me.
You're a big Psycho 2 fan.
I love Psycho 2.
He too is the Psycho.
Yeah, Psycho 2, let's get jiggy with it, I think is what it's called.
Ooh, almost
Yeah.
like Psycho 3 Electric Boogaloo, right?
Precisely. All right, Boozy, do you want to hit us with another one?
Oh yeah, I got lots for you guys this week.
Give it to me, Daddy.
I will. I'm gonna give you the very not exciting one first, just to get it out of the way. But I thought I'd mention
Oh,
it.
you want smoke? You want some smoke?
Oh, excuse me.
All right,
sir.
keep going.
All right. So the first one is 1989's Night Shadow. So Night Shadow is like a made-for-TV werewolf movie.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I managed to find this somehow. And it's about a big shot TV newswoman who returns to her home for a vacation as several of the town's residents start dying under mysterious circumstances. So this is a very strange werewolf movie. I've seen a lot of werewolf movies, and this one's very peculiar. It's the first time I've ever seen werewolf kung fu kind of come together at last.
Gotta appreciate werewolf kung fu.
Oh my god, it's something. I don't know if you guys look up like the actual creature itself. It's pretty stupid looking, which is kind of the reason you watch these films. So that's a little unfortunate, but you know, I wouldn't really recommend this to anybody. I'm just kind of like, hey, I've seen another werewolf movie.
You did it.
I did it.
Well, Werewolf Kung Fu is enough sell for me.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly,
Actually,
I
Man,
anything
does,
Kung Fu.
does the werewolf look like just a large Pomeranian?
yes, yes.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna ruin a scene from this, but it made me laugh so much. Is at one point, they hit this Iranian werewolf with a car and pin it against a wall, kind of like Terminator. And then this guy's trying to shoot at it, and he's literally like he's at the trunk trying to shoot this thing from the hood and misses every shot. And they spend like a good amount of time showing the fact that he misses, and he screams every time he misses, and it warmed my heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nathan sees it. It does it look like a Pomeranian? Yeah,
It
it
does.
looks
Yeah.
like a Pomeranian.
And Pomeranians are cute, but do we want a Pomeranian Actually, holy shit. That just jogged my memory. There's a short film at Screamfest that was all about a killer Pomeranian, and it was fucking amazing.
Oh, so we're proven
Was it called
wrong.
Night Shadow?
I
Was
gotta
it
stop bringing-
1989's Night Shadow?
It was not. It was not. Yeah, it was great though. But awesome. So Night Shadow, not good.
Nope, not a
That's
recommend.
that's a bad shadow.
Yeah, so we're gonna move on to some more positive things.
Okay.
So the next one, this is, oh man, I believe this is a Tubi movie. Yes, this is on Tubi. So I checked out 2009's The Thaw. And The Thaw stars everyone's favorite Val Kilmer. I always love a good Val Kilmer. And this is a bug horror movie. It's basically The Thing. If you like The Thing, you'll probably like this. It has some cool effects.
Buzi.
Overall, it has an interesting idea. The cover itself really doesn't do justice to how cool of a little film this is. I'd recommend, if you're into like bug movies, this is a fairly serviceable. I had a lot of fun watching this.
I will watch it, but for future, comparing anything to The Thing, like that's such a high bar to set, and I
No,
just cannot imagine.
no, not in that. It takes the idea of The Thing basically, and then so many
Okay.
films do that. So
Yeah.
if you're into that idea, I'm not saying it's like The Thing. It takes that base.
It is The Thing.
Yeah,
Guys.
it's a low key 2009 remake of The Thing starring Val Kilmer, which we all asked for.
Yeah, I added it to my list because you were mentioning it to me over text message the other day, and it looks cool.
Yeah, so I know that Tubi's popping off right now. A couple people have mentioned to me that there was Tubi commercials at the Super Bowl. Where's Tubi getting this money from?
Ads.
All their ads are also very peculiar. I saw an ad that had, I can't remember what actor it was, but somebody was like, is this from 2011? This, like, why are all these people here?
I love Tubi, but I think I've said it on the show before. Nothing in the world can deflate a tense scene like a white spot commercial that kicks in, because it's all like targeted. And I'm sure Nathan, like, I'm pretty sure white spot is just like a BC thing. I'm not entirely sure, but it's a burger. It's basically, I guess you guys don't even have Boston pizza. Jesus. It's like a Chili's. You guys got Chili's, right?
Yeah, we have.
Okay. Awesome. Buzi, can you turn your camera on and off? I think you're frozen.
Oh yeah, my whole Zoom is like stuck loading, so I can't do anything about it.
Yeah, all good.
I have one thing to say.
What's that?
I've got to add to the Tubi commercial. I may have been watching the game at that time, and I may have had a little something that completely even like tricked me even more when that happened.
Crystal
and
meth?
I was on crystal meth. I'm in Missouri, so yes, I was on crystal meth, and it completely tripped me up, like it did many of families where I'm sure little sons and daughters were getting yelled at by their parents, like, don't change the channel. What are you doing?
It causes it. I hope it doesn't cause an issue with the recordings. So we'll just wait for him to join back in.
You want to pause it and then download this and then jump back in?
Well, if I do that, I have to stop it and then exit out of it entirely. We have to jump back in like 4 minutes. Like, which we could do. Buzi, you there? Hey,
Hello.
the thing is though, when you do that, it will like, and I'm just like, after seeing it now, I have a tough time picturing that these decisions were unintentional. Like that the result of these decisions was unintentional. I feel like M. Night had to have known what he was doing. There were moments in the movie, basically, long story short, if people are wondering, they haven't seen the film, group of people go like from different walks of life, end up on an island, and they're unable to get off, and they are aging at a rapid pace. So it is a ridiculous concept, but I was there from the get-go for this concept. It's, it's a lazy comparison, but it's very much a Twilight Zone-esque type story. But yeah, like there are moments in this movie where I feel like M. Night had to have just been making fun of himself or like calling himself out for past decisions he's made and, kind of taking the piss from it. And it was really funny. Like I assume that this movie's meant to be really funny at a couple of moments because it definitely is. Obviously, it's like a little jarring seeing people age so quickly and it gets so wacky and out of control. But yeah, I like there's one part. Have you guys both seen this movie?
I have
Yes.
not.
Okay, Boozy, I actually think this is one that you would get a kick out of because
Really?
it's
I was gonna say I have like zero interest in this.
okay. Well, then yeah, maybe don't.
Well,
But
Dave Bautista is not in this, so
he's
I
not.
understand.
No, but yeah, I don't know. For me, yeah, it feels like there are moments in it where he's making fun of his movies, like The Happening and Lady in the Water, which, aside from Airbender and After Earth, which I haven't seen, I would consider his worst movies. But yeah, I don't know. There's like a really gnarly scene where the character, the model, she like basically folds herself into a meatball. I don't know if you remember the image of that, Nathan, but I was like
Mm-hmm.
jumping out of my bed, being like, "What the fuck am I watching?" And it pretty much blew me away that it was M. Night. It fumbles pretty hard at the end with the reveal of what's actually happening, but at that point, I just didn't really care. I was just having fun with what I was being given, and I gotta say, I liked Old. I had fun with Old. Definitely a fan, I think. But yeah,
What's your Tubi rating? Or what's your letterbox rating?
I gave it 3 out of 5, but I gave Knock at the Cabin 3.5 out of 5. And if I'm being honest, I think Knock at the Cabin's a better movie, but I had more fun with Old.
Fair.
So
I'm trying to remember what I gave Old because I remember when I gave it a 2.5. So I gave it an average score, which is I think what it is at the moment on here. But no, I feel like people either had fun with this or they didn't,
mhm.
like you were kind of saying. And I watched it in theaters myself, and I did quite enjoy it, even if I gave it like a 2.5. Like I still think a 2.5 film is a film that I still enjoyed. Right,
Mhm.
it's just not something that I necessarily loved. I think the ending did definitely like throw me off a little bit, and then some of the acting was a little bit like all right.
Yeah, but I think that's part of what I liked about it. Like some of it feels like it's bad acting, but I don't know if it is bad acting. I feel like it's the dialogue that they're expected to deliver, and I'm kind of here for it.
It is very wild, like you said. So honestly, having heard you talk about it a little bit, I definitely want to revisit it and go into it thinking a little bit more of like, this is just a silly M. Night Shyamalan film, and we'll see
It's
how it
yeah,
goes.
it's to me, this is the watchable version of Lady in the Water. And I at one point loved Lady in the Water. Last time I watched it, which will be I think the very last time I ever watch it, was when we did our retrospective on the Terror Table when we first started.
Right.
And I
Many moons
remember,
ago.
yeah, I remember going into it, like going into that episode being like, I'm going to be excited to talk about Lady in the Water because I feel like I'm one of the only people on earth who likes it. And then on that rewatch, I was like, oh, this is real bad. That movie sucks. So Old doesn't. I had fun with Old. It's ridiculous.
Fair.
Yeah, so I have that, and then I got one last one, but let's go around the table one more time maybe, and then we'll get on to our main feature.
Nathan, do you have anything left in the tank?
I haven't, maybe some less horror films. It's more of a personal horror story for myself.
Okay.
But you guys are aware of Ingmar Bergman, right?
Big fan.
I'm gonna push my glasses up as I say that.
Nerd.
Yeah, pretty much. Which is why it's the last time I'll be here. Anyway, so no, I've had the Ingmar Bergman's cinema box set from Criterion for like the last 5 years. And I started off pretty strong with our good buddy Chris Hurtado. Him and I went on a kind of a simultaneous journey back then, and we kind of just stopped because these are heavy
Yeah.
fucking films. But I told myself this year is like, hey man, you got to finish some box sets. You got a lot of movies in your collection that you haven't touched. And so I've been slowly over January and February been going through the rest of the box set. There are 39 movies in that thing. So it's a lot. And I now officially have 2 left.
Nice.
So that's my hoard journey.
You took a solid ass chunk out of that.
Yeah. So that was a flex. Let's now talk about you. Give us your favorite one or your favorite 2.
Well, it's weird because I've always of the discoveries. I'll just mention it, that like things that I hadn't seen before, because there's definitely ones I wanted to go in because it's set up like it's a film festival. So the entire box set has like opening night, centerpiece 1, all the way centerpiece 2 and 3, and then all the way to closing night. So it's set up kind of like that, like a kind of a 4 to 5 day film festival. And of the films that I had seen that I really enjoyed on this one, there was actually one that is kind of like a horror film, actually. So I guess it kind of, in a way,
Winterlight.
kind of what
Was it Winterlight?
Winterlight's more actually like what's the Ethan Hawke film? Paul Schrader.
First Reformed.
First Reformed. That's literally the same plot as that. Nice. But it's great. But no, I actually saw the movie. Looking at it right now. Come on now. I would say The Silence. The Silence is a movie that is very much akin to Winterlight because it's in the same trilogy. It's in his God trilogy, things that the lack thereof, I guess. But there's a lot of cold moments in it, and there's some really scary things going on in the film itself. I really love how Bergman sometimes just jumps into like the magical realism, kind of like it just sometimes maybe a character's having a nightmare and then it just becomes like a horror sequence. It almost feels like a David Lynch scene. And sometimes he throws that stuff in there, and I really appreciate that kind of stuff. Persona is also like that. I don't know if you've seen Persona.
Absolutely.
So
I'm a Berghead, I think. Is that what we call each other? Burgerheads?
Burgerheads.
I'm a Demon Burger head.
Jesus. Okay, so yeah, Ingmar Bergman's box set from Nathan.
Watch all 39, everyone.
All of them.
That's my recommendation.
Awesome. Buzi, do you have one you want to close us out on?
Yes, I have one left I want to talk about. So this is a Netflix film. It is from 2022. And I mean, I think if I would have watched it before we had recorded our best of the year, I probably would have thrown it on there. But I watched 2022's Hellhole. So this is probably one of the better films I've found on Netflix, and I'd never really heard of it. I believe it is a Polish film, but it's basically a detective goes undercover at a monastery because people keep disappearing. And I think this is right up your alley, Mitch, something that you would definitely enjoy. It's very satanic, very evil, has some really amazing imagery. I think the last 20 minutes is just like, it's delicious. It's great. I think if you can hang along for the ride until it gets to its climax, I think you're really gonna appreciate this film. So definitely for anybody who wants to check that out, it's pretty gruesome. It's pretty serious. There's not very many ha-has to be had.
Awesome. I'm very excited to watch this one. And I promise I haven't watched anything else in its place since I told you I was going to watch it. That's next up on my list. So I'm looking forward to checking that one out because it sounds up my alley, and hearing how much you loved it, that gets me excited. Cool. Last thing I want to close off on, then you guys good to get on to our main feature after this? Quickly mention that I had a chance to see 2023's Infinity Pool. So the new movie from Brandon Cronenberg. And I think he has, without a doubt, proven himself to not be just another quote unquote Nepo baby. The dude has chops. And as I'm a huge fan of David Cronenberg, I worry that David Cronenberg's best visions that he has to show us might be behind us at this point, which is no shade to him. Like, I mean, look at that guy's body of work. You make a movie even half as good as The Fly or Videodrome, you can make as many Cosmopolises as you want. You're still a legend in my books. But Crimes of the Future was fairly underwhelming for me. I wasn't a big fan. So having Brandon Cronenberg come in and fill that hole and scratch that itch for me has been something really rewarding. I loved Possessor. That was my favorite movie of 2020 when we talked about that a couple of years ago. But and I still think Possessor is by far and away his best movie. But Infinity Pool, it's deranged as hell, and it's really fun. I had a really good time watching it. He's the type of guy who he builds these elaborate worlds that work off of rules that he creates, but he doesn't ever really feel the need to explain how they work. And I could see how that would, irk some people. But for me, with the concepts being as big as they are, I'm just on board from start to finish. So I am really looking forward to watching this one again. Skarsgård is great. I think, I've just become a bigger and bigger fan of him over the years with movies like The Northman and now this. And Mia Goth is always incredible. But she's so good in this movie, but she's also insanely grating to listen to and watch. That's all I'll say. It's still so new that I want people to just get out and see it. But yeah, it's a wild one. Infinity Pool.
And
I really like Possessor.
That's my favorite. Oh, it's so good.
So this movie isn't about swimming pools, is it?
It is.
It's an Avengers crossover. So it's a Cronenberg Avengers crossover. We thought that Endgame would be the last one we would see, but actually there's a whole pool.
There's a whole pool of these Infinity Stones. Yeah, no, it's
even Endier game.
Endier, yes.
The endiest of games.
The
Correct.
Ender's Game.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Would you guys like to talk about our main feature presentation?
If you stop wailing about it.
Perfect.
Oh,
Great work. All right. We will be right back with our feature discussion on Nathan Jones's pick of the week.
요새 자꾸 동네에서 사람 죽어나가는 거. 그놈이랑 뭔 연관이 있는 거요? 싹 다 그 양반이 오거나 생긴 일들 아니오. 여기 다 뭔 일이다냐 그래?
여기서 다 죽여본다.
직접 본 거야?
한번 봤지?
맞는가?
이 뭐가 이제 이거 뭐야 이거?
아따.
자네 며칠 전에 만나면 안 되는 것을 만난 적 있지? 아내가 그곳을 건드려 그랬어?
똑같야 증상이 그 사람들이. 그놈이 자꾸 눈에 뵈는 것은 그놈이 자꾸 찾아갖고 왜는 것이라. 피를 말려 죽이려고.
그놈은 그냥 미끼를 던져본 것이고 자네 딸내미는 그곳을 확 물어본 것이요.
내 눈깔을 직접 봐야 쓰겠다.
And welcome to our main feature presentation, where we're going to be talking about The Wailing, which was directed by Na Hong Jin, who also directed movies like The Chaser and Medium, both movies I haven't seen, but spoiler alert, huge fan of The Wailing. So I will be going back and watching everything in this guy's catalog. Nathan, do you want to give us the synopsis of The Wailing and what it's about? Let's fill our listeners in if they haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's a rather difficult film to kind of mention with the crazy amounts of twists and turns that happen in the film, but to kind of just give a general synopsis, we're in a remote Korean village where we got kind of a loving, bumbling police officer as a dad who happens to be on the force, and there's a lot of really crazy murders and deaths that have been happening lately, and he's trying to figure out why. He, along with his family, are in this area, and it more or less you start going down the different rabbit holes of, like, there are strange happenings, there are people that we really know much about, and then bad things start to happen. I feel like that's honestly the worst description of it possible, but it's set in this really beautiful location, and there's a really, fantastic cinematography, and honestly just natural sets that are happening in the background. But it all really just centers around, like I said, this family, their dealings with an old Japanese man who happens to be there as a visitor, a lady that seemingly pops out of nowhere like a ghost, the entire police force, and their silly mediums, and then a few other people who are there along the way, kind of as red herrings. And I love this film, but I don't know if I gave that justice, kind of with the description I gave it.
You did great. It's a very dense film. This movie's coming in hot at around 2 hours and 40 some minutes. So it's an epic. And so this was the second time I had seen the film. Buzi, this was a first time watch for you, correct?
Yes, overall this is a first time watch. I did watch it again to cover this episode, so I'm trying to be as fresh as possible. But yeah, this is a first time watch for me, and yeah, I thought this was great. I kind of want to, when I get a chance, to throw back to Nathan and just talk about why he chose it. But I just want to say overall, yeah, as a first time viewing, I wasn't really entirely sure what to expect going into this. I hadn't read like a synopsis or anything, so I was kind of just like, wow, The Wailing, I don't know, maybe it's just like a possession film or something along those lines, and it really ends up being so much more. And yeah, I think the one thing that makes it kind of stand out more, and I find this to be with a lot of let's say in foreign films in that area, is that they have such a good job of blending like true horror with like humor and kind of goofy characters without it being silly, the way you have like the two cops in like Halloween 4 just be those like bumbling idiots that has like music following, like the tuba music. So I don't know, like there are some like very funny like bumbling idiot cop moments in this, but I don't know, it helps to service the film in a positive way when those experiences happen. You don't feel like you're taken out of the story too much with those elements. And yeah, it keeps unraveling, and every time you think you have it pinned or you have a certain character, it keeps going darker and darker. And I think by the end it's just like, holy shit, some of these ideas that you maybe had at one point that really you're like, maybe these things are happening, like it flips it all on its head. And I think that's such a cool film. And you know what, like it held up for me, even just watching it again, having like watched it recently and knowing that those twists are coming. Just to watch it again, it's still like so clever. It never like truly shows its hand until it's actually happening. So it does have that nice rewatchability to it. And I think also overall they didn't shy away from the violence or whatever. You basically start on like a crime scene and going through it in this like muddy and dingy area. I love I also just have to say, I love the location, like the setting of it being this kind of like remote village. It's like the equivalent to us of like the small town Saskatchewan or small town Missouri living. It's that it's their equivalent to that kind of like slummy small towny. And I think that totally fits it, and just it really does help, I think, with that lore. I feel like fairy tale and folklore don't work as well when it's centered in the big city, but when you have those smaller stories in those smaller places, they impact more.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
a huge fan of this one. I caught it, like I ended up watching it during the pandemic when we were all shut down, and it just absolutely blew me away. But I hadn't given it a rewatch until we decided to do this episode. And yeah, it just gets better on the repeat watches, because you can pick up on so much more. Like you all were saying, like in theory, though, it sounds like the way that we're describing it sounds convoluted or like confusing, and it never is. It never is. It's just that the director, and the story, it relies on the audience to speculate with it. And there's so many Mr. X. There's Mr. X at every turn. You have the Japanese man. There's even a theory about magic mushroom induced psychosis. The man who was practicing witchcraft and then slaughtered his whole family. It's like, Jesus, like how many horrible things are happening in this small village, and how are they all connected in some way? And like, who's really to blame for what's happening? And obviously I'm a huge fan of religious horror films. And I think this movie, it can be classified as a religious movie. It could be classified as a ghost story. It could be a demonic possession story. It could be just like a thriller. It's wild how many hats this movie wears. And I think that this is one of the best examples of something that has this much concept and these many ideas thrown into one movie and have it just work. I think it works from start to finish, and it's so fun going back to it and kind of investigating with the characters. And yeah, like in the opening of the movie, the opening quote is one of my favorite things. Like the first thing that you see in this movie, I'm going to read the quote. It's, "See my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Touch me and see, for a spirit does not have flesh and bones as you see that I have." And that's from Luke 24:37-39, Stone Cold 3:16.
One beer, two beer,
What?
3 beers,
What?
a margarita.
But yeah, I don't know. I think that the movie just does such a great job of ramping up the panic and the sheer terror of what these people are dealing with. And as it becomes like increasingly more paranormal, it causes like good people to perform horrendous acts. And that's one of my favorite things in horror. Like I love stories that make the good people like just so flawed and have to commit acts that you just can't imagine putting yourself in that situation.
Like eating at Subway.
Fuck off, eat fresh.
Yeah.
Love Subway. Shout out.
Eat fresh. Well, it's funny you bring up like that normal, like everyday kind of person picks up the slack and has to like do terrible things. But like that's another reason why like the comedy works so well, is because like you think about how would we handle situations like that? And honestly, I think the reason why I feel like even if you're being a bumbling idiot, I feel like if we were in a situation like this, we wouldn't know what the hell is going on too. And we'd probably make similar mistakes, and it would probably seem funny in the context of things. But I think that's the reason. Another thing too is not just to speak on this particular film, but just the films of Korea in general. I think they have a really good sensibility to themselves where they can blend kind of that natural lack of awareness mixed in with whatever story they're throwing in there, and it comes off as natural. And it doesn't throw, like you're saying, like the tone of the film off. And I think this film in particular, like we kind of mentioned, honestly, it feels like it's like sometimes it's The Exorcist, sometimes it's Silence of the Lambs, sometimes I'm watching some kind of slapstick bit, like with two cops seeing a naked woman at their door at a thunderstorm, things like that, but it all fits and meshes so well. And that's what is so crazy about this film. But that's why I probably had a hard time just like trying to like even give a synopsis of the whole thing.
It's definitely, it's thick and juicy. It's a dense one. There's so much happens in it. But I think a big thing I want to mention as well for myself is that even though the movie has an insane runtime, like it's never boring. And
it paces so well,
so incredibly well paced. And like the editing in this thing is crazy, because that's something I really paid attention to on the most recent watch, is like, because he does lots of intercuts and like has like, this is what's happening over in this area of the village at the same time this is happening, and at the same time this is happening, and you start to see them all just connecting with each other, and you can't help but like you always feel like you're about to completely crack the case. It's like, okay, this is absolutely what's happening in the story, and then it goes into a completely different direction. And something when we start talking about the ending, I think I'll wait for that, because I have something to say about the ending, but it's brilliant.
Overall, I think that this is a great, like you guys had mentioned, I'm kind of just retreading it, but it's not not just like it starts off feeling like, okay, this is just like a crime thriller, and then yeah, it ends up being so much more by the end. And like I think that for scene, which I don't want to go too much into the end, but like the Polaroid scene is one that really sticks with me. Like it's, if you would have told me or shown me that scene when we first started watching this, being like, this is going to be in this film, would have been like, what? But yeah, by the time you get there, you're like, okay, I'm down for all of this.
South Korea, just you guys also already mentioned it, they just handle comedy so well in this, and like this movie's so fucking, and yeah, it's just tremendous. Do you guys want to talk about the ending? Or Nathan, you look like you had something to say.
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to mention was obviously, dealing with this heavy subject material. I also quite enjoy the intercuts of the natural landscape that's going on in the background.
Yes,
I know you were mentioning the cuts, and I think the editing is really top notch. And but I also just think that the like obviously after that opening Bible verse, like you see a beautiful mountain and forest and lake, and the guy fishing, and then it just starts going deeper and darker, and then it's nice and bright. And a lot of the horror stuff actually happens in daylight, in very silly ways. I do want to mention before we get to the ending, there's a character, a group of characters, the bumbling idiot bunches. They're friends. They're just going out there trying to figure out what's going on. There happens to be a reanimated corpse of some sort. We don't exactly know what's going on with it. And it's a really hilarious scene, a really terrifying scene as well. And one of our kind of side characters is a priest who just happens to be with these characters, and the way he gets attacked and then eventually like gets bit on top of the head is just like an insane moment. Like it seems like a cartoon, but at the same time, like it's like oh shit, like we gotta get this guy to a hospital or something. But I love how like they just can't stop this guy.
It's very Scooby-Doo-ish or like Shaun of the Dead, the way it just like they just can't stop.
Are we talking about the Jason Lives scene where homie gets electrocuted?
I think you're talking about the one where he gets the rake in the head.
Oh yeah,
he gets the
that
nails.
one. And then the guy gets electrocuted by a strike of lightning, and it just makes me think of Jason Lives.
Oh right, yeah.
So good.
He mentions it. He's like, hey, it's like getting struck by lightning, and then walks away and gets struck by lightning.
So good. All right. Well, yeah. So clearly all of our listeners, anyone tuning in right now, know that we're all big fans of this one. So huge recommend. Thank you, Nathan, for bringing this one to the table. We are going to delve into a little bit of spoilers just to close the episode out. But this one, I know in Canada, it's available on Shudder. Is this in the All the Haunts BRs box set?
No, it is not. There is a pretty accessible Blu-ray. I think it probably ranges anywhere from like 15 to 20 bucks, but it's good.
big recommend. So if you don't want anything spoiled, then now is your time to check out. But we'll give you give you a few seconds filibustering, letting people get their phones out so they can pause. All right, let's get into the ending. So this is another one, like I was kind of talking about it with Knock at the Cabin, but eventually we learned that Na Hong Jin, like the director of this film, he decides to lean into ambiguity in this movie and makes the audience a part of the investigation. And I feel like ultimately he does give us an answer, but that answer in itself is shrouded with questions. So I've just read a few reviews where people were saying that it doesn't really have an ending, and I'm like, I couldn't disagree more. Like it does tell you exactly what's happening and what happened, but that's what I love about it. So the movie opens up basically with them all assuming that it's the Japanese man, that he's the one responsible for all this, and then we get these like fucking dozen other red herrings, and by the end of it you find out it actually is the Japanese man. And I think that's brilliant. I really love it. What do you guys feel about that?
I also love it, and I know that Buzi has more to say about it because he had mentioned this particular scene. But it is a horrifying scene that I quite enjoy because I do feel like up until that point, even when all that's going down, you still kind of feel like it's like, is this person involved in something? You can't really tell. What do you
Well,
think, Boozy?
especially when you have this character that the entire time you're like, okay, I'm pretty sure it's this one. They keep throwing me off, and then you have this character like supposedly die. So you're like,
Yeah.
okay, we're done with this character.
He gets so much he gets beat up so much in this movie.
Oh my god, he's like a rag doll. He just gets thrown around the entire time.
Yeah. Do you guys feel like and obviously this is throwing this one out of left field and giving you guys no time to prepare for it, but do you feel like the movie has like an overall message? And if so, what do you feel it is? Because I have my theory.
Boozy, do you have something?
I'm gonna say that it's sex, drugs, and rock and
Yes.
roll.
That's a good theory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't I feel like
Yeah.
the general message that I get from this movie is that basically anything can happen to anyone, regardless of your social status, your sex, your age, your ethnicity, or your belief structure. It doesn't fucking matter.
Right.
Evil will and can find you. And those
I
are
like that.
those
I
are some of
like
my
that.
favorite stories. Like I love when it's like there doesn't need to be an on the nose answer. It's just, wrong place, wrong
Yeah.
time, or like you never know when evil is going to hit you or your close ones.
Shit happens.
Yeah. That's my theory.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, that's a good theory, and honestly, I dig your point about the fact that there doesn't always need to be an answer, and I think that actually is at the heart of a lot of folk horror. Honestly, I think with a lot of these stories that we watch, and I'll just use The Wicker Man as an example. Obviously, we get an ending. It's like, but like, I feel like in folk horror, the good guy, the normal person is never going to
they
make
never
it out.
win.
And I think, and they never win. And I think that might be another main focus of what's going on in this film, is like you're saying, the bad things happen to anybody, literally anybody. And I will say there's some sub themes I feel like of like neglect that happen in this, and just with our with our main character, he's got like kind of a slothish nature to him and kind of a lackadaisical
Which
dummy
makes him so
side.
likable.
It's
He's
super
not your
lovely.
classic macho
It
machismo
makes you
cop at all.
care about him more, though. I feel like he's real. Like he feels like a
Yeah,
real
exactly.
father.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to get at, is like, you don't fault them for this, but at the same time, it's just like it's funny to me to think, that we are following this guy and all the things that are happening around him, and we're more or less pretty much a projection of this person. And then at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what's going on. We're going to face the reality of the fact that we don't understand anything.
No, totally. And I like that it doesn't, because it doesn't feel like, you can't say that this is it's not a religious horror movie. It definitely plays with those elements, but I think it's like we truly don't know who God is and what God is and what they're capable of, and whether they're gonna be on your side or not, when and how. It's just so interesting to me, and it's very nihilistic, and like I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff. So I really, really connected with it, but I feel like he absolutely gives us an answer, because we see the Japanese man at the end, and it basically shows us that this isn't ending. He's going to find other people. It's going to affect other people, infect, possess, all of the above. It is just, what a wild big bad that we have here in The Wailing. It's such a great iconic character. So I love that you brought this to the table. I love that we were able to give it some love, and hopefully get some folks to check it out.
So, some folks to wail out and watch it.
Any
Get your cameras out and see what can come from it.
exactly. Any last thoughts about the Wailing from either of you?
The last thing I would add is, go into this, like we kind of mentioned, if anyone's picking up from the lack of spoils, but if anyone's going into this, looking at the daunting runtime, I definitely second what Mitch was saying about just the pace of the film. It definitely just keeps going. Every 10 minutes something crazy happens, and it's super engaging. And I think despite its nihilistic tendency, it really is a really well balanced movie, and I highly recommend it for people who are just fans of horror in general. And then if you're a folk horror fan, this is second nature for you.
Buzi.
Yeah.
Buzi girl.
Buzi, I hardly know her.
Hey.
I just yeah, I want to reflect overall like what Nathan has said, that yeah, it does look like a daunting runtime, but as a kind of crime thriller that unfolds in front of you, it doesn't feel like that. And yeah, it has enough personality and character that you don't ever feel like it's a very procedural overall. I think it's a lot of you know, you stick with it and you try and guess along. Good experience.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, well, yeah, once again, Nathan, thank you so much for joining. We finally were able to make it happen. I'm so happy that we could. Before we close out though, can you tell
silly catchphrase I started saying when I was making videos? But yeah, I mostly talk about physical media, kind of what the current trends are, at least when it comes to like new releases. I do some Blu-ray haul videos and hunting videos with some friends. I do some conversations as well. I know Mitch has been on to do a film journey with just, you know, content creators across the YouTube platform, podcasts, all that. Anyone who's talking about film, I want to, you know, talk about and, you know, kind of showcase in the community. And that really is kind of a big focus on my channel. But lately it's been, you know, I have little projects in my you know, movie room that I've been dealing with, and just trying to find time to film something, just to get some good content for people. But I just love this community, and I also love, you know, the podcast community as well. And so I'm really thankful to be on this and with you guys.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. And speaking of the podcast community, you just joined the army yourself with a podcast called Scouring the Depths. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Scouring the Depths is with a former roommate of mine, and he kind of came across this because him and I have very similar music tastes, and I'm talking about like even outside of metal, like we like the same things, which is just insane. But we do have a shared interest in like I said, heavy music, and so punk, hardcore, and metal kind of at the core of the whole thing. And so yeah, so we've been doing that for the last like 6 months or so, a little bit less than that probably. And right now we're just finishing up our post metal series, and so I think we're talking about Russian Circles and Pelican in this newest episode. But we talked about ISIS and Neurosis, and a couple of other heavy hitters in that genre. But yeah, we talk about all sorts of things from, you know, we may pick a year and do a series on that, like we did in 2012, you know, at the start of the show. And then we can talk about hardcore and melodic death metal. There's all sorts of things. We have spotlights on albums and on people and things like that. So it's very exciting. There's endless topics, and I don't know. Eventually, we might get guests, but that's up to him.
Yeah, nice. Well, if you're interested in heavy music and you want to give that one a listen, pull the trigger, bitch. That's a Suicide Silence.
Fucking do it.
Yeah, it's a Suicide Silence reference. Deathcore. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening to another episode of the Terror Table. It was so great having you on, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan.
Well, we will see you guys next time, where we are going to be kicking off New Metal March. See you in a couple. Yeah, see you in a little bit. Thanks, everyone.
Whoosha! Oh, wow.